Have you ever wondered how to get your mixes actually sounding good? Do you ever question yourself if you're mixing in the correct way? Well, today, I hope this video will help you address some of the questions you might be having. Welcome back to Inverse Audio. My name's 5X, and today we've got our most requested video today, how to mix drum and bass. Apologies for not making this video sooner, but I wanted to make sure I could do the best possible job with this video, hence the long awaited time. This is how I mix, and it might not work for everyone. Do not take everything I say literally. Everyone has a different approach to mixing, but I hope by showing you my process, I can provide value for your own production journey. If you enjoyed the video, then please leave a like, make sure you subscribe to the channel, all support is massively appreciated. Comment with anything else that we should cover next, and without any further ado, let's get right in the video.
We're drifting in the light. Can we do better? Wish I could rewind back to the side.
So, what is mixing? I believe there are two definitions to mixing. First, the more technical version is the process of combining individual audio tracks to create a final stereo mix that is balanced, cohesive, and sonically pleasing. And the second, the more creative definition, which I feel like a lot of people forget about, is an art form that transforms raw audio tracks into a sonic masterpiece. It's like painting a vivid picture with sound, bringing your art to life. Mixing is essential to achieve sonic clarity and balance, ensuring each element contributes to the overall sound. It elevates the listening experience, transforming raw tracks into a polished and engaging musical composition. Basically, what that means is we're trying to get our song to sound as good as possible on the most amount of systems possible. It's all about the balance. Now, before we start mixing, we need to adopt the mixing mindset. Approach mixing as if you're sculpting sound, delicately molding and shaping each element to create a balanced and expressive sonic landscape. Focus on enhancing the strength of each component while maintaining a key awareness on the overall artistic vision. Remember that mixing is just as much of a creative process as making music itself. Doesn't matter if you're mixing your own music or someone else's music. In both scenarios, whether it's your own music or someone else's, you're bringing that art to life. So before we actually start mixing, let's go over some important tips that you should know beforehand. Take regular breaks, never mix in one sitting. Now why? Now this is because your ears can get tired after a while, meaning you might not be able to spot frequency imbalances or any imperfections in your mix whilst mixing, so it's important to take breaks. Also, coming back to a mix with a fresh ear, you might be able to spot something that you never did beforehand. Tip number 2 is referencing on other systems. Not everyone is going to listen to your music on good stereo speakers or maybe a good pair of headphones, so it's important to realize this and make sure we check our mixes on multiple different devices. For example, your phone's a great one. If you've got AirPods or any other headphones, earphones, anything like that, that's a massive help. Just listen to your mixes and make sure that it sounds good on them as well as your main listening device. Now, tip number 3, and I think this one's very underrated, and that is to mix at speaking level. Mixing too loud can not only fatigue your ears earlier, but listening at lower volumes can often reveal imbalances a lot easier than if you had it blasting really loud. That's not to say you shouldn't blast your tracks every now and then, because it is important to hear how the bass would sound, for example, but generally speaking, when we're mixing, we want to be doing it at a lower volume so we can hear those things more clearly. Tip number 4, check your mixes in mono. This is to check for any phase issues you might be having, any bass lines that are going out of phase and they just lose all volume in mono. A good mix will sound good in both stereo and mono, so make sure to check these every now and then. And tip number 5, that is to use reference tracks. This not only allows you to set a benchmark for your quality, to see what the levels should be for each element in the track, maybe to see how wide everything should be, how narrow the bass sounds should be, for example. However, do not be over analytical of your own mix. The professionals have been doing it for a very, very long time and they've got lots of experience. They might not even be getting the mix by themselves. They might be getting it outsourced by the label, which is quite common. So don't be getting too stressed if yours isn't sounding as good as theirs, but it's a good benchmark to have. Alright, so your mixing actually starts before you jump into the project, and that's called pre-mixing. So the first step of pre-mixing is organization. You have to remember that mixing is a creative process, and if your project isn't fully clean and set up before you start that process, you've already interrupted it before it's even started. Making a good mix is all about being in flow state, so eliminate any distractions. Put your phone away for 30 minutes. This will not only ensure that your mix gets done quicker, but you'll be a lot more critical and analytical within your mix. Having a good folder structure and backups is key for being organized in the long run. If you do face any hardware issues, you'll be really glad you made those backups. Or 3 years down the line, when you're trying to find out one mix you did and you just can't find it because you weren't organized, you're really going to regret it. So make sure you get that organization done nice and early. This could involve naming your folders appropriately or creating backups on the internet. Sign up for a free Dropbox account, for example, or upload it to your Google Drive. There's no excuses. And the second step of pre-mixing is knowing your tools. It's important that you know what each tool does so you can use them efficiently and effectively. If you don't have many plugins, don't rush into buying all of them at once. This can actually hinder your mixing. However tempting it may be, it is actually far better to know 10 plugins like the back of your hand rather than having 100 that you barely know how to use. This just ensures that you know how to use your tools very effectively and, once again, efficiently. Also proud to announce that we now offer mixing and mastering services on our website. So if you'd be interested to getting a mix and master from us, drop us a message on our Instagram, shoot us over an email, or you can check out more information on our listing on our website. But with all that said, let's actually jump into the project and start mixing. As you can see, my project is already organized and clean, meaning I can get into that flow state and mix effectively. Now, you want to do this before you actually start mixing, because you don't want to be doing it in between. You want to set up all your buses, you want to color code your tracks. This will ensure that you have a smooth mixing experience, essentially. So this track is actually an unmixed version of my latest release, Fever. Link will be down in the description if you want to listen to it. So let's give it a quick listen. So yeah, it's just sounding ass, right? It's super flat. There's no dynamics in there. Everything's just all over the place. But if you do want to get your hands on this template that we're using right here, it's on the website, available to download. So go check that one out. I would always begin with my drums when I'm mixing, because in drum and bass you have three main elements. You've got your kick, you've got your snare, and you've got your bass. Once you level those three, you can sort of reference everything around them. So I'm going to start with my kick and my snare, and I'm going to mix those to -6 dB. So kick and now snare, somewhere around there, something like that. Now for the bass, I will set my sub to -9. This is the level that I always keep it at, and it gives me a good consistent sub level. So -6 for the kicks. Let's move on to the rest of the drums. Hi-hats, I like to keep anywhere between, some of the louder ones I'll keep at -9. Other things I'll send down to -12. So for example, this one, I would put at -12 just because it is a bit of a, it's on all the time, right? So you sort of want to blend these two. Next, probably in between 9 and 12, -9 and 12. So now we've got our kick, snare, and hi-hats. Very cool. What else have we got? We've got a crash. Once again, I'd probably go about -15 for this. Somewhere in between that -12 and 15 for your hats is a good range typically. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm just listening to the kick and the snare, and I'm using those as references, because once you've got those two down, everything sort of falls in pecking order, if that makes sense. And we've got this little fill over here. Probably about -9 for that one. And we've got this top loop. Cool, that sounds pretty good. Cool, now that drums are out of the way, let's focus on getting everything else leveled. Then once we've established our bass levels, then we can start moving on to effects. I'm actually going to drive this sound a bit because it is really lacking. Mid basses and stuff, and all my other basses, if I want them loud, I'll go -6, and if I want them quiet, -9. They're all very much lacking right now, but we'll fix that with distortion and other techniques like that, so no need to worry. So now let's listen to the basses and the drums together. At least we're getting those volumes out the way, and it started to sound a bit more cohesive. So next, let's do the vocals. next, let's do the effects, and then we're just going to have a few instruments and things like that left. Now with these, I sort of tend to have them hit in like -15, -12. You don't want it too loud, but you still want to be able to hear it. Just be careful when you are layering quite a few of them, because the individual volume might not seem like much, but when you put 4 or 5 of those together, it can really eat away at the track.
Your attention every time we get close.
Cool. And then the only other two elements that we have in here in this track, it's actually a very simple track. We've got the synth and the atmosphere.
Boy, I got your attention. Every time we get close, we magnetize more than a physical reaction. I wanna feel all this chemistry tonight. You know, is this some kind of fever? You know, this floor is getting steeper. Don't let me go, cause you know that I'm a keeper. You know, and it's dangerous, oh so dangerous when I look into your eyes. If you're really sure that you want it all, we gon' have a good time. You know, is this some kind of fever? You know.
All right, so now that we've got the basic levels out of the way, now we can start going into some effects. So the very first thing, if you haven't already done this in your production, which you should have done, is sidechain. So I've got sidechain already enabled here. I'll quickly go over how to do your sidechain, although I will have to just drop a full tutorial on this because there's far too much to explain on why we do it and things like that. But essentially what I do is I load this kilohertz gain plugin. It's a free plugin that they have in a bundle. And I change it to the percentage, and then I just change it like so, just so that FL Studio remembers that I've changed the parameter. Then I'll go over here and I'll create automation clip. And once that's created, I'll try and trace the kick the best I can, so that when the kick does hit, we get that reduction in bass volume. Now this is just to stop phasing issues and to give us more headroom. Well, like I said, I'll do another tutorial on this, but absolutely essential for drum and bass, because I'll play you the difference with and without. So this is without sidechain. And this is with. As you can hear, it's a lot more bouncy. Now I'm going to have to adjust this because in the original song I use a different type of automation, but just for the purpose of this video, this will work. There we go, I'm pretty happy with that. So now let's start moving on to the effects. I think the first thing I would really do is beef up these basses. So there's a few certain plugins that I like to do. So let's start with this one. I'll always throw on a decapitator for some distortion and volume control as well with this auto output feature. I've been loving Rift recently as well. That's this plugin here. It's just a distortion. It can really help drive your waves. So I usually just select some random harmonics here and turn the drive up. And now this is great because it preserves the original decibels, but it drives the sound. So this is before and after. It's a lot louder and it fills up the mix a lot better. I'd definitely add something like an OTT with the depth really low on this, somewhere about 20%. And I probably want the sound to be quite a bit wider, so I'll add a wider, which is a free plugin, just for that stereo field. Now for my mid bass, one thing I've been doing recently is actually applying a disperser on it. Now this is by Kilohertz, but it's not a free plugin. I'll find a nice frequency and it just disperses it in the stereo field. All right, next, standard procedure, decapitator. And then a rift. And then we'll go on with an OTT, but turn the depth a lot. So we've gone from this to this. Now we are going to have to adjust the volumes again because they are a lot louder. Very nice. I am actually going to put a bit of reverb onto this bass, but I am obviously going to take the low off, so I'm going to do a low cut. Add a little bit of a pre-delay so that we preserve our transients. I'm going to turn down the bass and then turn up the treble. I'll leave the mix not too high, but you still want to be able to hear it. Maybe a bit more. Cool, that sounds pretty good. Now this other bass that I have, this counter bass, both of these sounds are actually sitting in the same frequency range. So what you can actually do to make these stop fighting is by separating them in the stereo field. If I pull up an imager, which is a plugin that I often have, just at the bottom here, I'm in the way. Yeah, there we go. So I'll just slowly. So that one for the most part is in the center, is slightly wide from the dispersers definitely helped it there. But this bass, we just want it to be super wide, like so. And then we play these two. They're no longer competing for that same space. And then I'll probably do the same things as all my other basses, decapitate. Bit of rift. Bit of OTT. I'm actually going to apply these plugins before the wider, so the wider comes last. Right, and then what we'll do here is we'll actually apply a low cut to the basses so that they're not competing with the sub. We're going to remove all the sub frequencies. Now we're actually going to use a natural phase here to avoid any phasing issues, because if you didn't know, when you do use an EQ, it does cause phase. So a natural phase reduces that. That's pretty good. And now we've got all of our basses. Once again, making sure that sub is hitting -9. Cool, and then I think the next thing would be beefing up the drums. Now we're going to do this mostly through parallel compression and clipping. So let's start with those. First thing, I want to make the snare hit a bit more. It's not the best snare in the world. I don't really know what I was thinking with this song, but but yeah, you live and you learn, I guess. So first thing I'm going to load up on here on my snare bus, sorry, is a kilohertz transient shaper. Now this just changes the transients. It applies volume automations basically like so. So we want a little bit of attack here. We don't want to be clipping this. I'll give it a bit more sustain as well. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add in a decapitator just for a bit more drive. Then a tiny bit of rift. So we're just driving all those signals. And then lastly, we're going to put on a standard clip. Now what this does is it essentially clips off any signal above the threshold. So you'll be able to see the red peaks here. Like so. Now this doesn't necessarily affect the perceived loudness. So as you can see, without the clipping, we're hitting about -4. But with the clipping, about -6.5, and it's a lot quieter. And the volume stays the same, sorry. So now that we've beefed up the snare, let's do the same for the kick. Now for the kick, I do like to use a standard clip again. This time with this Soft Classic Pro, just to give it a bit of drive. There we go, something like that is pretty nice. So we've taken our drums from this, very weak, and you can see the volume's -6, and then after all those effects, They're really loud, and they're still at -6. So it's all about playing with those transients and cutting them off using clipping, whilst increasing your RMS. So the next thing, hi-hats. I wouldn't really do a whole lot to this. The only thing I might do is put a stereo imager on these and just increase the width for this loop, just so we've got some stereo imaging in the highs. So yeah, let's listen to all those drums again now. Cool. The next thing I'm going to go on to is drum parallel processing, more specifically compression. So if you don't know what parallel processing is, it's when you make a separate channel and send the signal of either just one mixer channel or a bus, and apply effects onto it and then mix it in with the dry level. So for example, in this one, what we're going to be doing is compression, which is the most common one. So I have this drum bus set up to go to this drum parallel compression with this fruity send. And that just means I can turn it up without, when I turn it off, you can still hear the volume. Now, what we're going to be doing here is applying very heavy compression and squishing those signals. So we get those really squished transients, and then we're able to lay that in with a nice dynamic layer. And when you blend those two together, you get the benefit of having those nice transients and that nice dynamic loop, as well as having that squished body that just helps add to the volume and the RMS. So the first thing I'd do on this is load up a Pro C2. Now this does actually have a preset that I use, parallel compression. Now what you will want to do is turn off the dry, so you're not actually hearing the dry signal, because we've got the bus for this. All you're hearing is the wet gain. So as you can hear, it's super squished, which is exactly what we want for this, because remember, you're going to be blending it in with the other one. Now the next thing I add to this is, believe it or not, is actually a decapitator, just to squish that signal even more. And then lastly, just to control the peaks, because of this, I find that this plug is very visual and I can see exactly what I'm doing. I just want a slight bit of, see, just taking off those very peaks. Maybe we'll give a bit of a boost. And because now if we have a look at the volume at the EQ, it's very top heavy. So using this one, I'm just going to reduce the highs here, like so. And then when we blend this in, there we go. I feel like that's a pretty good volume. And now the last thing I do to my drums is clip them. Only very, very slightly. So there we go. As we can hear, a lot better already. Now for my vocals, I do have a sort of intricate processing chain. I won't go over the full thing today. I will do a whole separate tutorials on vocals, but I'll quickly explain. But I will quickly explain the general things that I'm doing to the vocal and why. You know. So this is without. You know. And with. You know. The first one is NS1. This is a noise suppressor. So this just looks for any white noise or any noise in the background, and it removes it using an algorithm. Next thing, we have a compressor. You know. So what, with this one, you know. Because this vocal's pretty compressed anyway, if we look at the waveform, you know, it is pretty even. There's no bits that are majorly loud. But with this first compressor, what I look to do is take off any of those top transients. So I'm not compressing the whole vocal, just those really, really loud bits. You know. Is this some kind of fever? You know. Which in this case, it's really not that bad, so it's probably not needed. Next thing is a de-esser. So to get those S's out of the vocal. You know. Is this some kind of fever? Next thing is gem dopamine. Now this I found, like, I can't exactly tell you what it does, but it does make it sound good. I found it, I was watching a masterclass by Disclosure, and they showed the plugin in the video, and I've been using it as, I've just got the demo right now, but I think I'm going to buy it because it's a really good plugin. This is what it does. You know. Is this some kind of fever? You know. This floor is getting steeper. Don't let me go, because you know that I'm a keeper. You know. So I set the wet to about, what's that? sort of 2/3, and it just brings it makes it a lot brighter. It brings it to life. It's like as if the quality of the vocal is leveling up. Then the next thing is this preset. It's a multi-band EQ, F6. It's called Vocal Cleaner. It is right there. This is just controlling the vocal. Next thing is CLA Vocal Stereo. This is another Waves plugin. Is this some kind of fever? It's just adding a little bit of treble and slightly compressing it, not too much. And it's adding that slight bit of reverb on there as well. Next thing is next we have C6. Now this is my source when it comes to vocals. It's this preset called, if you go down here, Ken Pooch, the Pooch vocal. Is this some kind of fever? And before. Is this some kind of fever? It just makes it so like studio quality like. I do love it. I just leave that preset on every time. And then also a lot of splice vocals, I feel like, because they're so close to the microphone, they make the bass frequencies and the lower frequencies, the mids, like really nasally sort of. So this just helps get rid of that. Is this some kind of fever? And then lastly, I've got our compressor, just compressing the whole vocal, just so that there's a nice steady volume. So let's go ahead and copy that over to the background vocal. Is this some kind of fever? Now with this vocal, as you can hear, it's very wide, and this one's mono-ish. Is this some kind? When you layer them, you've got one in the center, and then you've got one around the sides. So it feels like you can hear it around you rather than just in front, making it a lot easier to be heard. Is this some kind of fever? This floor is getting steeper. It makes such a difference. Anyway, let's turn that down because that's a bit louder. Is this some kind of fever? Now the next thing, in the template, I do actually have sends set up for my vocals. So these are vocal reverbs, a long one and a short one, and a delay. So I always put those in. And so for my long reverb, I use Valhalla Supermassive, which is a free plugin, and I use reverbs, medium, and massive vocal. Now, if you hear this reverb, it's so long. Yeah, there you go. And then you can also hear this fruity limiter. So what I do with my vocals is I actually sidechain them into themselves. So is this some kind of fever? This floor is getting steeper. So whenever the vocal plays, the reverb gets compressed and reduces in volume, but then as soon as the vocal lets go, it goes back up higher. Now the reason why I do this is to give the reverb, is to make space, because when you have a lot going on in a track, the reverb can make it sound muddy. So that way you can still hear the reverb whenever the vocal's not playing, but when it is playing, it's still there, just really faintly in the background. So this goes on for this as well. So this is my, I have a plate reverb with about 4 seconds for my short reverb. Is this some kind of fever? So yeah, those two sound really nice. And then for my delay, I have a H delay with a 1/4 ping pong with a high pass and a low pass, about 410,000 hertz. And what I do is I turn up my stereo separation because that brings it in. Because with ping pong delay, it's strictly left, strictly right. No, left, right. So what that does is it brings them in just so it's like slightly left, slightly right. So yeah, once you sidechain those back into the main vocal, so as you can see, vocal goes in, has the effects applied, and then we go on to this limiter, and as you can see, it's sidechained to the main vocal. So, and that's all 3 of them, and that's why you hear that spike. So yeah, with those added in now, this is what it sounds like. Is this some kind of fever? This floor is getting steeper. Don't let me go, 'cause you know that I'm a keeper. You know. Let me route these back in so that the effects actually work on this. So I have a little altar boy with 7.5 formant to get that lower tone. And then I also have this LFO tool with the preset Transgate 1, and that just goes with the 4x4 drop. Right, so I am actually going to sort out this kick automation, if I can find it. Because it's just not long enough. Okay, and also on the 4x4 we have this really cool top loop coming, which is nice, but what I'm going to do is add on a wider, send it to the sides. It's like a nice rhythmic element now. Let's actually apply a standard clip to the bass bus. Now, as you can tell, my mixing sort of all over the place because I usually do it as I'm producing, and then I will mix, sort of add the finishing touches later on. So it's not very often you have to mix a song, you know, like no effects, start to finish. So apologies if I'm all over the place. So what I'm trying to do here is control the volumes of the basses so we can get more headroom. You see they're a bit all over the place. And then I think there's not much left to do. I did forget there is actually this hi-hat in the intro here. So what we'll do is we'll add on a reverb onto it with very high wet, and the reverb time is quite long as well. You know, is this some kind of fever? You know, this floor is getting steeper. Don't let me go, cause you know that I'm a keeper. You know, and it's dangerous, oh so dangerous. You know, is this some kind of fever? You know, this floor is getting steeper. I'll also show you a good technique to get your vocals to stand out if you're struggling with your basses. Now this is sort of like not a last step or alternative, but if you can get away without using this technique, then you know it's probably better. But so it's a plugin called Track Spacer. And basically with this one, it takes an input and it sidechains it to the channel that you have it on. So if we set this up, so I have my main vocal going into my bass bus with no volume, which is where the track spacer is. So then you go to the little settings icon, processing, sidechain, and main vocal. Now that that's being sidechained, we can start playing it, and you'll see what it's doing. This floor is getting steeper. Don't let me go, cause you know that I'm a keeper. So using a low ratio can just slightly duck the basses whilst the vocal's playing, so it uses the vocal and sort of like traces it to get that better volume. Is this some kind of fever? This floor is getting steeper. Don't let me go, cause you know that I'm a keeper. But yeah, that's sort of most of the mix done. Now, what I do for my masters, I'm a little bit lazy, is I actually just use ozone. So I'll get the loudest section of my track and play it. Is this some kind of fever? Right, so once it's done its thing, I'll usually sort of check to see if I approve of the changes. Is this some kind of fever? This floor is getting steeper. Don't let me go, cause you know that I'm a keeper. You know. And then for my tracks, I always sort of aim for, to be honest with you, about -5 -5 LUFS. So it's about -7 right now, which is not too bad. Maybe if we drive it and do a little bit low soft clipping to like 2 decibels, is that going to help? I think that pretty much, wraps up this mix. All right, so now that the main portion of your mix is finished, it's time to reference. Here are a few key systems that you could reference your music on. The first one is your speakers, obviously. And the next one is turning those speakers and cranking the mono button. Another good one is listening on your headphones if you haven't already, cross-reference between the two. Another cool technique is if you put your headphones on the desk and turn the gain on your headphones really, really high, just so that you can hear it coming out. This will sort of emulate a phone-like experience. However, do not put them on whilst you have these really loud levels because you may damage your ears. And the other two that I would really recommend is listening in a car, and the last one is being your phone. Everyone has a phone. There's no excuse not to listen to your mix on it. Now, listening on your phone is great because all you can hear really is the mids. You won't be hearing much low end especially. So if your mix sounds good on your phone, you know you've done a good job. And lastly, how do you actually improve at mixing? Well, mixing is not something that can necessarily be taught. You have to learn it over time, but there are a few things you can do to help you improve. Now, the first one is ear training. There are multiple websites on the internet where you can train your ears through various activities and exercises. One that I like to use sometimes is Sound Gym. Now, not sponsored video at all, but I'll leave a link so you can go check it out. They have loads of exercises where you can pinpoint what frequency is boosted, where the song is panned to, and it's just a really cool little fun challenge to help you improve your ears and your listening skills. Another one is just to do it regularly. Now, it might seem really obvious, but the only way you're going to get better at it is just by doing it loads and loads and loads. So keep consistent with it and you will see results. Another one is to watch tutorials / masterclasses. Now, I think masterclasses are better because you can hear from the actual pros. They might not give away all of the secrets, but every video, there'll be at least 1 or 2 tips that you can take away from the video and put it into your mixes. And then the last one, probably the most undervalued one, is critically listening to music. Now, what I mean by this is sitting down, putting your headphones on, and really paying attention to what the music is sounding like. Where are the kicks sitting? How loud are the kicks? Where's the pads? Where's the hi-hats, for example? Just really listen to the sound and don't be doing anything else whilst you're doing it. Maybe get out a notepad and start taking down notes. But with that being said, I hope you guys have really enjoyed today's video. It's been a bit of a different one. If you want to see more information-based videos like this in the future, make sure to comment the topics that you want us to cover next. Also proud to announce that we now offer mixing and mastering services on our website. So if you'd be interested to getting a mix and master from us, drop us a message on our Instagram, shoot us over an email, or you can check out more information on our listing on our website. If you want to check out any sample packs or sound kits, go over to the website as well. And we also offer one-to-one tuition. We currently have 3 tutors, myself, Denver, and Ross. So more information is on the website. But yeah, once again, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, Inverse Audio out.